the March social briefing. March ready. We've got some good stuff in store, so I'm going to take us through the platform updates. Not that much this month, so kind of clutching at straws, but got a bit to go. Essie's going to be taking the long thing on long form content, and I'm going to be talking about engagement for 10 minutes as well. So let's crack on. Platform updates. So, start with Facebook. Facebook had the most stuff going on this month. So this is a big deal for the ads team. So campaign budget optimization. Has like anyone heard this before? Exactly how. Good job that you have. Essentially, so on Facebook you usually set your budget at ad set level. So you get to kind of put how much budget you're doing on different audiences. Facebook are moving that to campaign, so that they're going to like pick where budget goes without us tinkering with it. So it kind of moves towards how we've been approaching ads anyway, but it kind of certifies that we're going in the right direction. But Saki will properly update on what that means when it rolls out in September. Update on the stuff we talked through last time around groups. Pages can now like join groups and talk in them, which sounds a bit weird, but there might be a few features that we can use there. If we've got any branded groups, it kind of helps us with community management. We don't have to make a fake account and pretend to be a person anymore. You can do it as a page. Next thing is interesting for community management. Facebook are testing bringing in Instagram messages into the Facebook community management bit, which means you can reply to everything from one bit, which is quite interesting. It means you wouldn't have to log into Instagram to do it, which is quite good. Unsend feature, a bit of a small thing, thought it was interesting to include. You can now unsend messages within 10 minutes on Facebook Messenger, quite interesting. And this came out last night, which is like really interesting. So Facebook Showcase, so this is like a premium placement thing for ads. So when you buy TV advertising, obviously you'll like pay more to be placed on like big TV shows. It's more expensive. Facebook are basically doing the same thing. So they're going to have like premium placements on like Facebook Watch, the kind of big showpiece TV style things. You can pay more to be placed there, which is quite interesting for like big brands, bigger budgets. They can pay more to be like shown amongst more popular content. So it's interesting. That's Facebook. Instagram. This is something that you've probably seen on your feeds this month. Really trying to push IGTV. The way they're doing that is like integrating it into the feeds to get more people kind of going from the feed into IGTV, and also showing in like their highlights on the profile, IGTV previews and stuff. IGTV seems to be like struggling a bit to get lots of people going into it, like going out of the feed into that feature. So this is a kind of effort to get more people using it. This is really interesting. So collections on Instagram, where you kind of curate stuff into a collection, they're testing making those public, which is kind of like Pinterest style, so like curating collections based on things. An attempt to like steal some of Pinterest share, quite interesting. And little one, but they're testing a like donation sticker on Instagram stories, quite interesting for charities, non-profits, stuff like that. 3 more things to talk about. So Reddit have like really upped their advertising game. So they're doing cost per click ads, so like a bit more similar to Facebook, and they've got a conversion pixel now. So quite interesting to look at for any clients that might fit. LinkedIn doing live video looks exactly the same as the Facebook one. That's so similar, but it might be quite interesting for like B2B stuff, events, that kind of thing. I think rolling out over the next few months. And again, I follow up to last month's social briefing. TikTok are like going all in on the native ads now. So they've got like, it's very similar to the Facebook ads. There's like a learn more feature. You kind of swipe up onto a link or app installs, that kind of thing. So yeah, that's the roundup. Essie.
Thank you very much, Callum. I want to touch upon just spend the next 10 minutes talking about long form content. Why it's important? Mainly because increasingly we will start making things that are not necessarily just 10 or 12 seconds. So what does that actually mean for us? I want to look at a couple of categories of basically long form content and how that works. Puppy. I just got a puppy on the slide. Career highlight. Essentially wanted to look at why we're not making bite-sized, snackable content in all cases anymore. You know, it doesn't have to be. It has been our go-to for the last couple of years, and I feel like social in general has been very much of, you know, a bite-sized, short-form landscape. But why are we looking at long-form content? Got it, great. So I wanted to look at a couple of different categories for that. When we talk about long-form content on social, usually we do refer to long-form video content. So the actual length actually does depend quite a bit on the platform itself. So, you know, your 30-second piece on Instagram might be long-form, whereas the 30-second piece on YouTube might be incredibly short. So when we talk about long-form content, we usually refer to content that's anything between 2 minutes and 60 minutes. Obviously, of the last, couple of years, last year really, Facebook have brought out Watch that really encourages long-form content, so up to 60 minutes, same as with IGTV as well. In terms of how people actually consume the content, when it comes to the feed, you know, that it's almost, that's the place for your short form stuff. So that's where everything, your attention drops off after a couple of seconds. When it comes to stories, it's even quicker than that. So, you know, you really need to capture everybody's attention in the first 2 seconds. But what we're moving further towards, and what we see Facebook and Instagram want to encourage, is this almost like live TV kind of watching. So, you know, it's where we see people watching content for a couple of minutes, for half an hour, even up to an hour. Because obviously it allows for loads of different new ad placements, so more cash. But wanted to look at 3 different categories for long-form content. These are basically the 3 biggest areas that brands and publishers use at the moment to create long-form content. First one is this category around emotive content. So it's something that makes you feel. Publishers do this quite well at the moment. So this is an example from BuzzFeed. I think it's got over 190 million views on Facebook Watch. Essentially this content that makes you, you know, it makes you cry, it makes you laugh, it makes you say, what the fuck is this? Essentially it makes you feel. It's, I guess the long form format, or, you know, having more than 12 seconds of someone's attention allows you to tell your brand story in a more nuanced way. It allows for that emotive storytelling. It allows you to explore different aspects of your brand or different stories. So first category, that's the emotive. This particular one, you should watch it. It's this Holocaust survivor, Eva, who's basically telling her story about being at Auschwitz, and it's very, very emotional. The second camp of long-form content is around this educational content. So whether it's, you know, interviews with experts, it could be your Vox Pop style stuff, it could be reviews. Essentially, it's anything that makes you think. This is a good example of it. It's actually not a branded piece of content in itself. It's by a creator, YouTube creator, now go on Facebook Watch creator, called Ted Forbes, who's a photographer and a filmmaker. But this particular piece of content was sponsored by Squarespace. So what you can do on Facebook Watch is that you don't actually have to, as a brand, you don't have to create a piece of content yourself. You can actually sponsor an existing creator, which kind of allows you to align with, obviously, you know, their values and what they stand for, without actually having to put aside the production budget for making that video. But when it comes to educational content, it's more about, you know, having that high relevance. So what people, it needs to be something incredibly relatable for you and what interests you. It usually posts a question or a choice, encourages opinions or debates, especially Facebook Watch, and the way that they frame long-form watching is all about this community aspect. So they want to get people talking while they're watching the content as well. A couple of interesting things about this one. As you can see, it is with Squarespace, so it's using the Facebook branded tagging option. But also, when you search for Squarespace on Facebook Watch, that content shows up, even though it's not created by Squarespace. And you will see the Facebook, basically the branded videos will be down here. So the program kind of shows up first, which is quite nice. And he's very kindly included a short shout out to Squarespace in the caption as well. Unfortunately, he's made a little typo there. Trial. Not nice. And the third camp, not the second one, the third one is all about this empowering content. So this is about making you do something. Outdoor brands are very fucking good at this. Your Red Bulls, your Patagonias. This is an example from Patagonia. It is actually a YouTube video, but they've repurposed it on Instagram IGTV, which, you know, it doesn't work all the time. You can't just necessarily put your YouTube videos on IGTV and then expect people to watch it. But this one has had 73k views on IGTV and 90k views on YouTube. So they've actually done a very good job of driving people to IGTV. Patagonia have a very nice balance of sort of short form content on the feed, because they always know that people will be watching your 10-second pieces on the feed, and then driving people to IGTV or to Facebook Watch to explore more. But essentially, this third camp of long form content is all about mobilizing. It's all about encouraging. It's all about that making you feel like you have to go out there and do something. So it incentivizes change. So essentially, the three different categories for long-form content are to make you feel, to make you think, or to make you do. But just a word of warning before we all go out there and start creating 30-minute pieces. Please just make sure that you're not creating content for the sake of it, but have something to say.
Thank you very much. So I want to talk about engagement. Engagement as a metric is the thing we talk about. We can talk about why it's dead, and we have to bury it. So engagement for the last 10 years has been the thing we talk about when we talk about social media. It's like the currency of social. It's what everyone kind of equates to be good social. So we use phrases like engaging content. That's kind of what we talk about when we talk about good content. Like within this agency and within the industry, engaging content equals good content. And when you look at how the industry talk about social media, it's all around social media engagement being the king, proven strategies for engagement, this social media examiner thing, proper cowboys, 26 ways to create engagement content. They always come up when you Google something. It's the first thing. How to increase social media engagement, it's all around engagement being good. What I'm trying to make the case for here is that if we keep talking about engagement, we're actually undermining our kind of quest for business value for our clients. Every time we talk about engagement as the main thing in a report, every time we reference content being engaging content, we're actually kind of undermining everything we're trying to do. So engagement needs to die. We need to stop talking about it as a big thing. It's an interesting thing to look at, but it's not something that represents good social media. So I'm going to put some nails in the coffin and explain why it's bad, so that when we have this conversation with clients, we've got 4 things to go through. This is why we don't look at engagement as a good metric of social. So, nail number 1. Engaging isn't normal. It's not a normal activity on social media anymore. It's not what normal people really do in droves. So this slide, which I used about 10 times, only 1% of all users on Facebook engage. So that's minuscule. That's a very small percentage. When you look at the engagement rates that we use as our kind of benchmarks, it actually sounds a bit ridiculous, because what we're saying is that if you're going on Twitter, only 0.069% of our audience will ever engage with something, and that's good. On Facebook, 0.23. It's like, when we think about what that actually means, it's quite stupid to be looking at that stuff, because it's just like such a small segment that we're going for. Dark social, like, big reason for that, like, people just don't really like, share, comment that much anymore. It's quite weird to do it. Like, whenever you think about commenting on a post, you're like, oh shit, all my friends are going to see that I've commented on that, so you just won't really do it. There's friction against doing it. You'll share it like in a message, you'll probably just not share it at all. It's more weird to like something than not to like something now. And this like isn't a new thing at all. So I found this graph, and back in like 2006, people were talking about this before we even started using social media. So this was around online forums and things like that. They basically came up with this rule, which is the 99-1 rule. So on any place in the internet, social media, forums, blog, whatever, 90% of the people that are kind of on that will never do anything. They just read. They're lurkers, which is kind of the same on social, right? You just kind of scroll. 9% will do something like maybe chip in occasionally, or like comment on something maybe occasionally, and then 1% of the people who like make the content. So that, if you think about that in a social sense, it's kind of like that 1% of the influencers, right? They're the people who do loads of content and put it out. 9% might engage or like comment on that, and 90% of us just kind of like consume it. It's actually really true still. That's from 2006. That's the first nail in the coffin. Like, engagement isn't a normal thing anymore. It's not a normal action that people take, which means it's quite silly that we view it as kind of the main goal for social. Nail number 2. So engaging is a reflection on the person, not our content. So Facebook did some research on this. They said there's a meaningful correlation between engagement rates with friend content and engagement rates with advertising content. So what they're basically saying is that an ad engagement reflects people's tendencies to click on content. So what they're saying is the people that like more of their friends' posts like more of the advertising posts. So you'll actually just like, when you get loads of engagement on a post, that's the people who engage with loads of stuff on social anyway, not it being like really good content. Does that make sense? So it's kind of like a really biased sample of people that will engage anyway. So when we look at that as the main thing, we're cutting ourselves off from most of the people. Nail number 3, getting even more important with each nail. Engagers aren't the people that we need to persuade. So when we think about who we're trying to persuade with our social, who we're trying to talk to, it's not the people who are going to engage with our content. Marketing science stuff. Most of the sales and most of the revenue that a brand makes comes from light buyers, so people who buy it like once or twice a year. They are not the people who are going to engage with your content, but they are the people that need to see our advertising and communications the most. So there's been a study on this. So the graph on the left is where most sales come from, or like where we need to persuade people. So it's mainly like the people who never buy it and the people who buy it once a year, that they're the people that contribute most in terms of sales. And this is like the proportion of people who like your social media. So as you can expect, it's mainly the heavy buyers, the people who buy it loads. And what that means is that when we're focusing on engagement, we're like talking to the people who will buy it loads anyway. They're not the people we need to convince with our stuff, like they're going to buy it anyway. So it doesn't really make sense to be looking at that as the main metric for success. Final nail in the coffin, engagement does not equal effectiveness. So when we talk about engagement, we kind of talk about it for a proxy for being good, but it doesn't mean good. Like, there's almost no link between the two. So this is kind of the mindsets that you go through when you see a post on social, and eventually like what the steps you go through. So the first thing you do is you give it your attention. So you might stop scrolling and like you get the attention. Then if you're lucky, like you'll get interest. So people will kind of continue watching the video or just like stop for more than a second. Only after that, you might persuade someone. So if we're trying to get a message over, we might persuade them on the message. and then after they've been persuaded, they might express. So an expression is like an engagement. So they might do that after persuading. But they also might just like capture their interest and go straight to express. Like you don't have to be persuaded on something to engage with it. It might just be a cool piece of content that you might share with someone, but it doesn't mean we've persuaded them on what we're trying to persuade them on. And my argument is that if we're in like communications and if we're in marketing and advertising, actually we just need to focus on persuading people. That's what we do. We're not trying to get this expression stuff. And like to persuade, you don't necessarily need to get this expression. Does that make sense? So what I'm saying is we just need to get attention, get the interest and persuade people. That's our job. And there's also been loads of research on this as well, like the correlation between engagement and clicks and actual business results, like recall, awareness and intent. There's no link between the two. Like if you get loads of engagement, there's no link between getting loads more sales. Like it just doesn't really correlate. They're different things. And this is all a problem because you are what you measure. This is what came up on Google Images. If we are measuring engagement loads and talking to clients loads about engagement, that means that all of our work will cater towards that engagement thing and miss the actual good stuff, which is the persuasion stuff. So what now, like no engagement, like what do we look at instead? 6 things, but actually what I'm saying to you is there's no like catch-all thing that we can go to instead. We just need to do a lot more work on a bespoke client basis and like this is what we measure. And we have actually done loads of work on this, like we don't really use engagement for any big KPIs anymore, but we do still use the language and we do still use it in reports and like we do still talk about it. So stuff that's interesting is the reach and the frequency, not on its own, but it is still interesting. This is what we used a lot in a presentation yesterday, talking about how much of our audience are we reaching at how many times a week, and kind of using that as an interesting thing in combination with some other stuff. Through play is interesting, it's a new thing from Facebook, so they've been like slaughtered on their video views stuff because it's not really a real video view. So they're moving towards this, and the through play is basically watching all of a video or 15 seconds if it's longer. So it's like that is kind of like quite a bit of intent if you're watching 15 seconds. So that's an interesting thing to measure as well. Ad recall isn't perfect, but it is probably better than engagement. It's a prediction on how much people will be able to kind of recall what we're telling them 2 days later, which is an interesting thing to measure. Obviously ROAS, obviously leads. Brand lift is interesting as well. Again, it's not a perfect thing, but it's better than engagement, and it shows us the impact we're having on brand metrics and persuasion and things like that, rather than just it being a cool piece of content. So what I'm saying is measuring engagement, when we do it, it undermines what we talk about with business value. They're not the same thing. That's because engagers are in diminishing supply. There's not many people who engage on social anymore. It's a very like biased sample. It's a reflection on the person, not the content. They're not the people that we need to persuade. When we go for engagers, they're the wrong people. And it does not equal effectiveness, which is why we need to kill it. Cheers.